Hi, this is Bruce with Deep South Sauce Company for B&B Charcoal, and today I'm going to be cooking a chuck roast using a kettle grill and the snake method with B&B brisket charcoal. So let's get started. So I have a kettle style grill here. It's 22 inch. It needs to be a little bit bigger. It's hard to do on those small tailgaters. Need to be a little bit bigger. I like using a briquette because they're a little more consistent in their burn than lump in this case. I'm just gonna dump some in. Now the chuck roast is gonna take several hours, so I wanna be sure to put enough in that I can create the snake to kind of go around the edge of the kettle here. And so what I've done just through my experience is I've kind of timed and measured between the points at which the grate sits on top. So from here to this second one, and I usually start here, is about 2 hours, right? At the airflow and everything that I use. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my briquettes, and I've timed this using, the B&B Charcoal competition briquettes, and I do 2 wide, and I'm just gonna kind of set them up like dominoes, right? And this could take 10, 15 minutes. It's a little bit of time, but it's well worth it at the end of the day. I mean, this is gonna be a several hour cook. So I'm trying to use my most all these are very intact. Just kind of lay it around. Because of the cook, I'm gonna do 2 rows of it, and actually some on top as well. And what it does is it snakes around the edge, and if you need to, you can put a spacer and come back around in between. But I'm just gonna line these up, and I'm gonna stop here for now. You're just gonna have to trust me that I'm gonna finish on out. And what I can do to add some flavor to my wood, right? Because I'm gonna put the chuck roast in the middle here, and I'm gonna put a water pan under that, and I'm gonna add some B&B hickory chips, right? So I'm just gonna kind of put these hickory chips along the top, and so as the charcoal burns, these hickory chips will start burning and give me some hickory smoke to add flavor to my meat. All right, and how I'm gonna start this is I'm gonna use the B&B Charcoal starters, and I'm just gonna kind of layer them in here to get me started. And light those. And then while those are getting lit and everything's going, I can continue to build this around. Now I'm gonna cook this chuck roast for about 4 hours, so I'm gonna go all the way around. And another way I can control the time is most all smokers have a draw, right? And this one, it's in the bottom. The air is gonna come up from the bottom and go out the top. So I can adjust. Now when I'm starting everything, I leave it wide open so I get the most draw that I can for the airflow to come over my fuel, which is my charcoal. And when I'm ready, I'm gonna slow it down. I'm gonna close those down to about half on the bottom so I can get a longer, slower burn. Now, if you find that it's not burning as fast or as hot as you want, you can certainly open it back up. One method is to leave the bottom wide open and adjust only the top, right? So you have a top adjustment and a bottom adjustment to allow that airflow. So that's a common theme on most all grills and smokers, but it's important when you're doing these longer, slow cooks to understand how the airflow of your particular grill or smoker works. All right, so our B&B Charcoal briquettes are on our kettle grill in the snake configuration coming up the temp. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep our meat. Now we've chosen today to do a chuck roast, and the reason I like a chuck roast is, well, for a couple reasons. One, it's considered the poor man's brisket. Now that's not a bad thing. When I bought this yesterday, it was about half the price per pound of a brisket. And I think it's a little more forgiving as well. But we're gonna treat it exactly like we do the brisket. And I'm looking at it right now. It's got a little bit of fat on it. So I just wanna take off the big chunks of fat. Nobody wants to eat those anyway. So we're gonna just take off the big chunks of fat. There's a little bit of what I call silver skin here on the edge. I'm just gonna run my knife under it and take it off. I wanna get rid of any silver skin. It's a barrier to flavor, right? It's a barrier to the smoke. It's a barrier to the seasonings. Now, when I do this, when I put it on, it's gonna take several hours to cook, and I'm gonna look to get the temp up in, in the 200s, going for tenderness. So it's gonna be on there for a while. And so I wanna do a couple things to protect it. Number one, it's got some nice fat in it. Number two, I'm gonna put some of our Deep South Sauce Company True Gold on there. Now, I'm not usually a binder kind of a person. I don't think you really need them. I think it gets created itself. But our mustard sauce has a balsamic vinegar in it that reacts with the meat and the seasoning I'm gonna use and makes a really nice crust and flavor. So I'm just gonna kind of rub that in all over. Like I said, I'm not really using it as a binder as much as adding some flavor to it. Because of that balsamic vinegar, it's got some sugar in there. It's gonna create a nice crust and get that smoke. Now, for the seasoning, you could just put salt and pepper on this and be just fine. I happen to be using one of my favorite seasonings here. It's got a little bit of everything in it. I'm gonna make a nice crust here, but for anything that I'm doing that's brisket-like, should have a lot of salt and a lot of pepper. Get a nice liberal coat. This is a big piece of meat, so it can take it. So don't worry about over seasoning too much. You're not really gonna be able to put too much on here that this meat can't handle. Make sure I get all the sides as well. Now, people will talk about a smoke ring and things like that. Now, if I was really concerned about getting a smoke ring, I'd want to use like an offset stick burner, because that's really where you get your smoke from. So don't worry about getting that smoke ring using the method we're using today. It's all about the flavor, and honestly, the smoke ring is really just a visual. It doesn't add flavor. It's just a visual piece. We're gonna let this sit while our smoker continues to come up to temp, and then we'll be ready to put it on. All right, so the chuck roast has been resting. I finished out creating the snake and put the hickory wood chips around it. I put a third pan with some water in it to go underneath, just to kind of help with the moisture. It's as it should, slowly burning through the snake. The dome temperature was about 250. That's pretty close. I wanna cook at the 250 range. And so now I'm just gonna take my chuck roast. You can kind of see the moisture's been pulled out with the rubs and everything. And I'm just kind of putting it over my water pan. I like to kind of push the meat together to get it so the fibers are pushed together. I think that helps in the cook. And then I'm gonna add thermometer in there so I don't have to keep opening up my lid. I'm gonna try to get right in the middle there. Ultimately, I'm gonna look for about once it hits around 198, 200, I'm gonna start probing it for tenderness, etc. I don't know yet if I'm gonna wrap it. I'm gonna see how it goes. I'll check it about 165, see what my bark color looks like, things like that. I may or may not wrap it in aluminum foil. We'll kind of make that call. But throughout, I'm gonna open it up maybe every hour and hit it with some beef broth just to keep the outside moist. I just have some beef broth in a squirt bottle that I hold by, and I'll just squirt it on there as it goes. Now, one thing that I would say that I like to do is, right now, my charcoal's burning on this side. I like to put the vents on the opposite side so the smoke will draw across my meat and out the other side. And so we'll just let this go and check on it in about an hour or so and see how it's going. All right, so it's been about an hour and a half or so with this chuck roast doing the method. I did move the vents here just a little bit to keep track, and we'll kind of see. It's sitting at about 350 in the dome temp. I'm not too worried about it because I'm keeping the thermometer right above the charcoal, right? So you can kind of see that the charcoal is just kind of weaving itself through. The chuck roast is, it's starting to look good. Hadn't really formed a crust. Is a little bit, drier on this side because the heat's over here than that. And that'll even out, and I could always rotate it if I want. But really what I'm doing now is I'm just gonna spritz it, put some moisture on the outside. And the internal temperature is about 100 degrees right now. So we're just gonna continue to monitor it once I close it up and just keep looking at it. Probably check in another half hour or so just to see and make sure it's still continuing to run through. I'm gonna put the lid back on again. My heat source is right here, so I want my vents to draw across the meat to make sure it gets as much smoke flavor as I can. So we're at about 160, 165 degrees on the chuck roast. I'm just gonna go ahead and take a look at it. I peeked at it a little earlier because we've been spritzing it with some just beef stock about every 15 to 30 minutes. And I've decided I'm not gonna wrap it, but I wanna flip it, all right? Because it's close to those coals. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of take it off here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull my thermometer out because I'm gonna have to rotate it. And just to make sure it doesn't fall apart, I'm just gonna spritz it real quick. And then I'm gonna just slide this under and flip it just to get a little more crust on the top. There we go. Spritz it a little bit more. And there we go. Let me put the thermometer back in. And then we're gonna let it go for probably take another couple hours. The charcoal's doing as it should, working its way around. It's a little over halfway through what I put in here, which is probably about right for where we are in the cook, because I'm at about 160 degrees and I'm looking to go to about 202. So I'm a little over half and I'm a little over halfway on the temp. So it's working out just right. All right, so our chuck roast is ready. Look at that beautiful bark on there. It's temping out around 202 in various parts. So I'm gonna pull it off. I'm gonna spray it with a little more beef stock. And I'm gonna wrap it, double wrap it in foil. And I'm gonna let it rest for about an hour or so. And then it'll be ready to pull or slice. All right, so we took the chuck roast off about an hour or so ago, let it rest in its own juices in some double wrap aluminum foil. And now we're gonna see what we have here. Oh yeah, it's got some beautiful bark on it. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of slice it and see what we have. Not too bad. We got a little bit of a smoke ring. I didn't expect too much because we're not using wood, but we were using B&B charcoal briquettes in the snake method. And so we had that long, slow cook. And so we just kind of have some, little bit of ring around there, nice moisture in the middle. Yeah, that's a beautiful cook right there. So this is Bruce with Deep South Sauce Company for B&B Charcoal, and we did a chuck roast smoked on a kettle using the snake method with B&B charcoal briquettes.